Thank you everyone for joining. I'd like to invite each of you to join on building this exciting new coalition, and Michelle will be talking about this more in depth at the end of the meeting. But if you would like to be a part of the first steps and/or meetings, or would just like to know more information, please just send me an email at amanda@usgreenchamber.com. I will be putting that in the chat as well. We will be having a Q&A at the end of the webinar, so if you have any questions or concerns throughout the event, please contact Jesse Donk-Rains in the chat box, and he will be relaying those questions to the panelists near the end. I would first and also if you have any technical issues, please feel free to alert Hallam in the chat box. And I would first and foremost like to thank all of our speakers today for joining our call. Each of them are very accomplished and have largely contributed to the sustainability sector through their chambers. And if you would like to see their full biographies, they have been posted onto the Eventbrite for this webinar. And this event is particularly special to us because it is our very first webinar in our series that features chambers that are based in East Asia. And so we are very happy to welcome the European Chamber of Commerce in Singapore, the Swedish Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong, the Swedish Chamber in Singapore, and the British Chamber of Commerce in Singapore. And Glenn Hallam will also be our special guest speaker today as well. So our first chamber speaker today will be Nilay Cornelius, so sorry, before we get started, we do want to play a little introductory video about our coalition.
Let me know if everyone can hear it. Our mission is to engage chambers of commerce around the world to lead on sustainability, on climate action, and on green business practices. So to connect, educate, inspire, and of course we need to act. We will be successful when all businesses go green. And together we can achieve this goal because as chambers of commerce, we are the business leaders in our communities.
What we can do as a collective group is jot down what services and what resources we provide so that we can share that with each other, because I'd certainly to be able to look and see what you do, and those collaborations are incredibly important.
It's a very attractive opportunity to bring businesses within our network and our particular network and the network of the coalition into an international platform.
Chamber of Commerce are in a unique position to bridge between business stakeholders, residents, and policymakers. That said, it's not an easy pathway, as you know, on some of these issues. And so the chambers play a role of being a little bit of the middle person.
Our first job is to pose questions, to lead public discussions around D&I topics, both locally and globally. We need to help encourage and reinforce cultural change.
The coalition has been growing exponentially, developed a monthly webinar series, launched Chamber of the Week recognitions, and so much more. Join us today at usgreenchamber.com to become a part of this international, collaborative, and passionate group of chambers. We invite chambers of commerce of all sizes and backgrounds because we are in this together.
Thank you so much, Haley. So we are so excited to say that our coalition has gone international very quickly, much quicker than expected. And we've mainly been working with chambers in Europe as well as Latin America and the US mostly. But this would be our first event where we get to hear from chambers in East Asia, which I'm sure will be very valuable because policy and everything else to do with business varies from country to country. And so our first chamber speaker today will be Nilay Cornelius from the European Chamber of Commerce in Singapore. Nilay?
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you all for this opportunity. Good morning for us here in Singapore, and I don't know, good night or good evening for all the rest of the world. Yeah, happy to share with you. I understood we only have 7 minutes. I'll try to run through it as fast as possible because it is an important topic. Sustainability and the care for climate environment is definitely high on the agenda of many governments and companies are members. So I will share my presentation. I hope it works again, like we did with the test. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So first, a little bit about EuroCham as an association, as a chamber in Singapore. So we are established 30 years ago. We are kind of a hybrid system, an organization that is an umbrella organization for the European national business groups here in Singapore, but equally we have our own corporate members, and we focus on the MNCs from Europe in the first place, because those bigger ones can open doors for dialogues with stakeholders. Singapore in ASEAN, it's important because Singapore is a stepping stone for the region. And when you talk about sustainability, Singapore can take the lead here. And whatever happens in Singapore, we see often that those practices are copied in the region. So that's why it's so important. Even we are a small red dot on the map of ASEAN, Singapore has a key role to play as the leader and so to inspire also the countries around us. A very promising region with almost 650 million consumers. So it has a meaning on the global scale. So I run on our sustainability program. So as European Chamber, we understood that Europe also has a key role to play, is a leader in this, and is also recognized as a leader on a global scale. So as a chamber in ASEAN, we thought we need to pull that card. We need to understand where, or at least facilitate a platform where we can exposure collaborations, challenges, but also opportunities, of course. So when we drafted the program, and it's a 2-year program, and probably will continue, but for now we had a framework for 2 years. We looked first at the priorities of the Europe Green Deal. So what's on the plan for Europe? We looked at what's on the plan for Singapore, and it used to be blueprints all over the place. And then end of last year, they collided everything in a green plan. And then we were also looking at our own members, our European companies. What are they doing? And that's basically how we came up with some focus areas, because sustainability is very broad. And when you run a program, it's important that you understand, okay, what are we talking about? What are the different areas that we want to highlight? And what is important in the continents where we are? So that's why we came up with these 8, spread over 2 years, 8 pillars of focus. So last year we focused on circular economy. That entailed reducing waste, finding other ways of producing your packaging, your products, ownership as well of some products. If it's not better, instead of owning it, renting it for cars, for instance. And so I come to smart mobility was another pillar that we highlighted, where we here in Singapore are looking very much into car sharing, electric vehicles. So basically finding other ways of transportation, and not only cars, but also definitely also public transportation. So finding a way for healthier and cleaner transportation. The next pillar was green finance, very much important as well here in Singapore, because it's a key player. If the banks, the financial institutions only give the fundings when the company or the project can prove that they incorporate the ESG elements, and if then only the banks agree and approve the fundings, that's definitely a way forward. Biodiversity and agri. And then when you look at ASEAN, it's very important because, it's under threat. And the biodiversity with all the burning of the forests, it's definitely something that we need to bring to the platform and highlight how important it is to keep it, to reserve the bio and the agri. So it covers also, the sourcing of the food, the traceability, the healthy food. It goes on into aquaculture technologies. So those are all elements that were covered under biodiversity and agri. The next pillar was clean and efficient energy. So we looked here at renewable energies. Here in Singapore, the main focus is on solar energy, and we took the angle to green buildings. So we were also looking at the technologies that could, or materials that could neutralize the carbon emission of the energy of a building. Sustainable food and nutrition, covered already a little bit in the biodiversity and agri, but still here we highlight the high-tech farming, the traceability across the whole supply chain, and definitely also food wastage reduction. So that is definitely also high on the agenda of Singapore.
So sorry to interrupt. This is your 30-second notice.
Yeah. Okay, green jobs is another one that we highlight. So all these new technologies will ask also for new leadership, also new techniques. So reskilling is important. And then the last pillar is green consumer. We see that happening in Europe. There is a pressure of the consumers, but here in Singapore or in ASEAN, it's also very much growing. So we try to cover these topics with sharing sessions. We involved a lot of stakeholders, universities, experts. So every month we were running one of the topics over sharing sessions. And then cherry on the cake was the awards that we conducted in a virtual version. We had it last year in November. We had key VIPs as guests of honor like Ursula von der Leyen and Minister for Sustainability and Environment, Grace Fu. I want to share with you what Ursula von der Leyen said, because she also highlights the importance of collaboration and Singapore and Europe walking the parallel path of the green economy.
Our free trade agreement is the first trade deal with a sustainable development chapter. For instance, the deal incentivizes companies to use natural resources sustainably, preserving rather than destroying our environment. So Europe and Singapore are walking in parallel on the path towards a greener economy. Our free trade agreement.
Okay. The awards were very important. We had a lot of media attention by that, and that's exactly what we needed to be. We had a whole structure on the evaluation criteria. So you see there on the left, all the companies that were nominated. And then we actually, another pillar of activities was a sustainability white book. It is a book that comprises actually all the best practices of the European companies operating here in the region. But equally, we were addressing to Singapore some concerns. We had 5 position papers in that. So you see them here, the 5 position papers covering the topics that I already mentioned to you. And what is important is with this combination, the sharing session, the awards, and now the white book, it opens doors for real dialogues in closed door sessions with regulators and governments. And that's actually the ultimate goal of a chamber that's focusing on advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nilay. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, thank you.
Great, great. You did mention, I saw that you mentioned that you guys have 13 industry and topic driven committees. I did want to point out that I noticed on your website that you have a packaging committee that addresses plastic challenges by suggesting degradable plastic and plastic ban solutions. I personally was most interested in that because it is an extremely rapidly growing industry. So I'm so glad to see that your chamber is addressing that matter. And our next speaker will be Anna Zan from the Swedish Chamber in Hong Kong. Anna?
Thank you. Yeah, we can go back to the first page. So just shortly, I realized 7 minutes do run by very fast. Shortly about us, the Swedish Chamber in Hong Kong that I represent, we are promoting Swedish business interests and values in Hong Kong since 1986, and today have 160 member companies, ranging from entrepreneurs, startups, SMEs to large multinationals, representing a multitude of different sectors and industries, from manufacturing to services, and regional headquarters in Asia, which does reflect the diverse business community in Hong Kong. We also have more than 60 individual or young professional members who are people with an interest in the business community, and specifically the Swedish business community in Hong Kong. And among the different committees we have, the sustainability is the largest one. Yeah, we have about more than 20 member companies, and I'm the vice chair of this committee. Our member companies, I think many of which you recognize, like IKEA, H&M, that are part of this committee, but also from different industries such as transportation, we have finance and law practices, logistics, retail, and Business Sweden, which I represent through my day job. And so we have the sustainability managers of this company, or local managers who all have an interest in sustainability here in our committee. And if we flip to the next page, I can tell you more about our focus areas. Has been in the past shifting from organizing community activities to actually advocacy and influencing policy making in Hong Kong. Because many of our companies are at the forefront of sustainability in their own industries, but here in Hong Kong, they realize that the market isn't ready for their solutions yet. And in a business climate survey, many of the member companies say that Hong Kong is lacking government action in driving this agenda. And we also see from the European example, as well as from the Swedish example, where government is very active in driving sustainability and the green pillar in the economic growth model. So that's why we realize that we have to focus more on this area in order to create that landscape for our member companies to thrive. So our focus area, the first one is in plastic waste. This is moving from Sweden to Hong Kong. The most compelling thing is realizing there is not a comprehensive recycling system in the city, and not one for plastic bottles either. So this has been one close to our heart, and we launched a position paper on this very early. Engaged government agencies, NGOs, and businesses in a dialogue among this. And we also are very proud of launching a plastic pledge where almost all of our member companies signed this pledge to ban single-use plastics at their offices. So this is a way in which every company could contribute. And this also spread to Swedcham in China, I believe also in Singapore, where we do share some member companies that have presence in both areas. And now recently, we're also happy to see that the government, they did launch a recycling scheme, a suggestion on how that could look like for plastic bottles. So we were very happy to contribute to that public consultation, building on the experience we have in Sweden with a plastic bottle recycling scheme that has been successful for 30 years. So excited to see that one coming to Hong Kong as well. Aside from that, we did used to, when it was possible, organize some community activities called plugging. And this is, I think, a Swedish invention where you can go jogging and mix with the word for picking up trash at the same time. So we engage companies and families in this activity. And at the end of the track, we weigh the bags and see who picked up the most plastic. So that's another way to raise awareness. Green recovery is a key issue that we've been focusing a lot on in the past year. In the middle of the pandemic, the health crisis and the economic crisis, we did see that there is a need and an opportunity for Hong Kong now to transition the economy and the society towards a low carbon one. And with the European example where the EU Commission and Ursula von der Leyen taking the lead with the Green Deal, we thought something like that is needed for Hong Kong too. So we launched a position paper in October, communicated with very clear policy recommendations to the government in different areas such as energy, transportation, buildings, and efficiency, waste management, recycling, and even the finance, green finance, what needs to be done and can be done in Hong Kong. And that we have a lot of our Swedish companies who stand ready and want to be part of this low carbon transition. And so we're very happy that we did receive attention from the government leader, the chief executive herself. And it was a very good timing, I must say. Even 1 month later, she announced through the government's policy address the Hong Kong's carbon neutrality target 2050, following, of course, the one that the China also did. And that's what we see a lot in Hong Kong here right now. That is, as China is taking the lead in their own carbon transition and climate work, it is trickling down to Hong Kong. So we want to be part of that and also push the government here through engaging experts, NGOs, committees, through local partner organizations and so on. So we've been quite active in local media and been owning this topic here. And it's been speaking with local NGOs on local radio to raise awareness. And now as we see the government launching their initiatives for different sectors like waste management, electric vehicles, this topic continues to be relevant and we can continue to have this dialogue with government, with relevant sectors. So we're very happy about that.
30-second remaining notice.
Yep, so overall, we're very happy with this transition towards more policy-making influence, which we saw a clear need here in Hong Kong that was voiced by our member companies. And we're also very lucky to be in an environment where government is listening a lot to business communities, where we've been able to have dialogues with them in different forums. And so we will continue to do this through our channels, through media, and wherever we see opportunities and relevant areas. Our Swedisham Sustainability Committee will be out there with our voice and represent our company's interests. Thank you.
Anna. You mentioned that you have put a lot of effort in your local media, and I know that many chambers use a variety of mediums like newsletters or webinars like this one and etc. But I did notice through your website that you launched a podcast about a lot of interesting topics like smart homes and sustainable fashion. I love to see new interesting ways of sharing information, so I'll definitely be tuning in. And I did want to remind the audience that there will be a Q&A for the panelists at the end of the chat. The event, I guess Jesse and I have telepathy because he just put in the chat. Please feel free to direct any questions to him and they will be answered by the panelists. And I'm going to hand it over to Jesse, who will be moderating the next set of speakers.
Thank you, Amanda. Up next, we've got Lisa from the Swedish Chamber of Singapore. Lots of Sweden as well as Singapore representation at today's event. Lisa?
Yes, thank you very much. I can take the next slide, please. You can stick to, keep that one for a while. So yes, my name is Lisa Ferreton. I'm the general manager here for Swedish Chamber of Commerce in Singapore. I'm very happy. Thank you so much for inviting me and all the rest of our sister organizations here in Singapore that we actually know quite well already. We work closely with the Swedish Chamber in Hong Kong. We are a member of Eurocham. So it's very happy to be here to speak to you. So Swedisham in Singapore, we have around 130 members, which includes most companies established here. The chamber has been around since the 1980s. And we have companies that have gone back a long way in Singapore. They've been here since the 1970s, some even longer actually. Sweden is not a large country in terms of population, only 9 million, but we are very industrious and very entrepreneurial. And we have actually the largest number of multinational companies per capita in the world. And we also have the largest number of unicorns per capita outside Silicon Valley. And sustainability is in our DNA, in everything we do. And most of our member companies are at the forefront of sustainability in many different ways. But having said that, obviously in Asia, it's different. It's not Sweden, and we have different challenges. We have to implement our ways of working in terms of sustainability differently. And Swedchem has had a busy sustainability committee for many years. But today, though, I would like to take you quickly 7 minutes through our journey over the past pandemic year. And with that, sort of perhaps challenge you a little bit to think bigger around sustainability, and also show you what we have found through this journey, which I think applies to most chambers, actually. First of all, I'm very happy to hear about the coalition and the partnership that you are building up now with your chamber around the US. But first of all, I just want to start by saying that although everything relating to our environment and climate change is obviously very, very important, let's not forget that there is only one, there isn't just one sustainability goal out there. As you know, there are 17 SDGs under the UN umbrella, and most companies have ambitions to reach the 2030 SDGs on most fronts, not just when it comes to the actual, the green side of the environment. And I think it's very important here to remember, and also the United Nations is very clear, that the SDGs provide a global framework that enables integration. And the SDGs are an opportunity for change because they are interconnected and they combine needs of people and planet. And each goal is interconnected with other goals of the SDG agenda. And for this reason, we can't just pick and choose. And in order to get what we want, actually the last SDG, number 17, becomes extremely important. And this is all about innovative partnerships and working together. And what we have seen over the past year is that companies can be struggling to keep up with their SDG 2030 or ESG agenda working alone, even if you're a large MNC. And it's not easy to make an impact if you're on your own. And the Chamber of Commerce, as a sort of a neutral partner, is really an excellent platform to create more impact and amplify the ESG strategies of its members. So next slide, please. So as the pandemic hit in April, obviously devastating for everyone and also for a chamber that is used to being able to, have physical events, networking is very important and so on. And we were really struggling to see how we could stay relevant. But a very interesting discussion started here among our members. And in the end, we decided actually to focus on how we could support Singapore in this crisis situation. And this resulted in an initiative that we call SESG, Sweden-Singapore, which was launched in November last year and is still running. And the message of this initiative is, in times of crisis, businesses should stand together, and includes 3 projects with the aim to show that with collaboration, we can emerge stronger out of the crisis. And we also wanted to put the spotlight on how integrated our Swedish companies are here in Singapore. Many, as I said already, have been here for a very long time, since the 1970s. So next slide, please. So in this first project, which became quite a spectacular one, actually, we had 12 Swedish multinationals that we paired together with 12 local micro SMEs in Singapore, like really small businesses, mom and pop shops, small restaurants, DIY stores, tailors, fruit stalls. And this advertising campaign we called The Advocate. And in this campaign, which was created by a Swedish advertising agency and a member company of ours called Forsman & Bodenfors, it was visible on 500 billboards and 13 buses in Singapore. And it just sent out a message on working together, basically. And it placed the spotlight on entrepreneurship in Singapore and how much small and large companies can learn from each other, especially in times of crisis. And the second part of this project, SESG project, called Fika for Good. Fika is a Swedish word for sitting together and having a chat over a cup of coffee. And Fika for Good encourages collaboration between large and small businesses as well. Here we are developing a number of opportunities for our Swedish MNCs to start a dialogue with local SMEs through mentorship and knowledge sharing on anything from sustainability, digitalization, HR questions, strategy, marketing, anything. And our third project, the Swedish Gig, focuses on creating apprenticeship positions at our Swedish companies for the local workforce, which has been hard hit by the pandemic. And here we are supporting a government initiative led by an authority called Workforce Singapore, where we that support mid-careerers, so people from 25 to 40 that need to upskill or reskill due to the pandemic. And at this point, 11 Swedish companies are on board, and they have created 43 apprenticeship positions. So since the launch in November, SESG has got a lot of attention around the island. It's been celebrated both by the Singapore's Prime Minister and Trade Minister in social media, and have been covered in the local press. And as a chamber, I feel we have broken new ground. More importantly, there is nothing more important actually than cooperation between local and foreign stakeholders at a time of mutual challenges, both when it comes to the environment and also what we see now, obviously, from the pandemic. Sorry to interrupt. You've got about 30 seconds remaining. Yeah, perfect. So, and in our member evaluation survey, 65% of our respondents wanted us to continue with local outreach projects within sustainability in order to raise awareness of Swedish companies, support integration, and so on. So we are now launching the Green Innovation Center, which is a new local outreach project where we are working with a very active garden community in a residential area of Singapore, as well as, yes, exactly. Thank you for changing slides. And the local district authority and one other authority in Singapore called Enterprise Singapore. And here the aim is to support Singapore implement their Green Plan 2030, which was launched in February this year on grassroots level, together with a number of Swedish companies. So we will build an outdoor living room and work together here with the local community on building awareness and knowledge within different areas such as the 3 Rs, so reduce, reuse, and recycle, composting, waste management, water conservation, circularity in consumer product, vertical farming. And for our member companies, it gives them opportunities to collaborate with local SMEs, strong in sustainability, spread Swedish thinking around sustainability, and of course, raise the sustainability profile of a Swedish company. So Singapore has a very ambitious green plan that they are implementing. And we believe that making it a success, we have to start on grassroots level. And we as a chamber really want to be involved here. So yeah, that was everything for me today. Thank you so much, Lisa. And I would just love to commend you on how much of an emphasis you've placed on knowledge sharing and cooperation. That is the goal of these events, is to share knowledge with each other. I know that you already have relationships with a lot of the other chambers speaking tonight, but it's great for our local US chambers who are attending this event to see these solutions and see this cooperation in action, because to tackle issues as large as climate change, it really will take all of us. So thank you so much. With that, I would like to transition to David Kelly, our next speaker from the British Chamber of Commerce in Singapore.
Hi there, good afternoon and good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for today's session. Great collaboration. I'm not sure how I'm going to beat the previous 3 presentations, to be honest. I'm going to come at it from a slightly different angle. But before I do, it's great to see Lisa and Nilay from Singapore, and great to meet you, Anna, from Hong Kong. It's great to see that collaboration. As Jessie said, I'm David Kelly. I'm the Executive Director of the British Chamber of Commerce in Singapore. So we just go to the next slide. I'll just give you a bit of a flavour of where sustainability comes into our activities more broadly, and why we're actually doing this and how it's all linked. So as a Chamber of Commerce, we're about 4,000 members here in Singapore. We've got obviously great relationships with the British Chamber of Commerce network in the UK, which expands about 80,000 companies. So our reach in terms of our activity is quite broad. And we also play a regional position here in Singapore. We also chair a Britain in Southeast Asia network. So this is very much a regional campaign, not just based in Singapore. But all of our activities around trade, it's about commerce, it's about business growth, and it's about creating jobs. It's about creating the right people, having the right people in your organization, creating a diverse workforce, and providing a platform for those that are coming into the market with the right skill sets to help those companies to grow. And then the sustainability angle for us really is ensuring that we're working, creating jobs, creating growth, creating wealth in a world where we all want to live in. So this is very much a golden thread throughout all of our 5 core pillars of our chamber. And I'm going to demonstrate how we do that through this presentation over the next 6 minutes or so. Next slide, please. So one of the things we did was we launched a net zero hub. So we created a platform where all of the great activity from the British business community here in Singapore and our regional government connections and the activity that we deliver with them was all in one repository for members to share. So going back to Anna's point, this is all about not taking ownership of a specific area, but sharing best practice across a much wider network as well, which we're very passionate about. And that started off by us thinking about, okay, well, if we're championing sustainability as a chamber, don't we need to commit to this as well? So we went carbon neutral in 2020. We calculated all of our CO2 emissions, and we ensured that we have a plan in place to reduce our CO2 emissions. We've offset those against renewable energy sources across Northeast Asia as well. So we are absolutely committed to all of this and fly the flag ourselves, as well as the business community more to deliver this. And really this hub was a platform and a repository for all content to deliver further sharing across our network more broadly. Next slide, please. What does the hub consist of? Well, it consists of some areas where you can partner with us. It's got our sustainability commitment journal in there. It's got research papers that we've delivered from the business community. We've got activities on how companies can get involved with this, and general knowledge sharing as well, which is all available in one place. Next slide, please. As well as linking into, and I think Nilay highlighted this in her presentation, around Singapore's agenda to champion the sustainability piece as well. So, you know, the Singapore Green Plan 2030, the UK research that we're doing between both countries that sits under the SG-UK Partnership for the Future, and all the general activities that are happening between both countries are all available in one place. And this is about creating one repository to consistently translate that message to our members. Next slide, please. So how does that work more broadly? Well, we have 12 business committees, like all chambers do, that are peer-reviewed platforms to share real-time information on what's happening in some specific sectors. We've got 12 business committees spanning transport, logistics, energy, utilities, marketing, sustainability, people, the built environment, etc., and finance. So we've got a really core group of committees, and one of the things that we did was to ensure that whilst we're championing sustainability as a chamber, that actually this needs to be built up from the members. This is not just us delivering a strategy and then asking our members to roll it out. This needs to come from the members, for the wider community as well. So a lot of the content that was delivered by our business committees, and you can see some of them here from last year in terms of some of the topics, and I'll come on to what we're doing this year, was absolutely driven by business, for business, to allow us to create that platform to share best practice. Next slide, please. So we created a matrix, and that matrix basically mapped out all of our business committees along the top and all of our business committees along the side, and then hotspotted areas where there was crossover. So I think, Jesse, you were on one of our panel discussions on avoiding greenwash, which was co-delivered by our sustainability committee, but also by our marketing and communications committee as well. We've had a future cities and a food resilience piece going through. We've had a transport and a future hydrogen economy piece that's been played out by several sectors and some of our business committees as well. Carbon capture, uses and storage, which Singapore's absolutely on the trajectory to do some more research in and build that capability as well. And all of this is linked back to our government interaction. So a great example of this is we've got an event coming up in a couple of weeks, which is around the maritime and the transport piece. Singapore's just announced a 120 million Sing dollar decarbonisation hub to champion innovation and tech in that area. And again, through the committees, through our connections, through our activity with Singapore government and the UK government, we're helping to build that platform and cross-pollinize all of those great opportunities where tech and innovation can create meaningful partnerships here in Singapore. And then we can use our platform more broadly through Southeast Asia to be able to translate that further. Next slide, please. So in terms of how that's helping sort of all our individual members as well, we've, I guess similar to the other chambers, we've got a podcast channel, we've got a webinar platform, we've got a magazine, which is allowing us to promote all of this activity. But one of the things that we have seen a change is that the members are actually asking for content in this area. So we've got all this content available, and this is all free, by the way. So all the stuff that we curate, you have access to it through our podcast channel and through our on-demand service as well for non-members as well. So please go and check that out on the website. Next slide, please. Just a couple of other pieces. Again, lots of content coming through in our magazine. I think we can go to the next slide as well.
Sorry to
Conscious
interrupt.
of time.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Yeah, and our carbon neutral journey as well. So on our website, it actually tells other chambers how we've gone about it and how we've offset our CO2 emissions. And it's not just about offsetting it, but how we're actually reducing our CO2 emissions going forwards, which has been a great piece of work that we've all been working on, and that's translated through the rest of the team and the members as well. Next slide, please. So a couple of bits of government engagement that are coming up. I'm sure these slides will be shared afterwards, so I won't go through the bullet points there. But again, it's about that connectivity that all of the chambers play in terms of, I think I heard the word amplifying earlier, which I absolutely champion in terms of supporting that activity. And the next slide, please, I think is the final slide. A bit of a call to action. So with the UK hosting COP26 in Glasgow in November, there is a global campaign on the race to zero, and this is something we're championing through our hub. So one of the things that we're working with, and I would be reaching out to my colleagues here in Singapore. So Nilay, Lisa, please expect an email soon. Is to try and get as many global companies signed up to this race to zero pledge as we possibly can. We're working with our partners at the Singapore Business Federation and other groups of that are looking after the business community here as well, to really champion this and really support. So we want to be a good amplifier in that space. Next slide, please. And I think that is then the final one. No, next slide, please. So just a thank you. I put the website up there for you. It's, I guess, just in summary, I think we're all doing this because it's important for business, but we have absolutely intrinsically linked this to business activity, linked to the CPTPP activity in the UK's application to join that, the regional place that Britain has in terms of our regional chamber activity, COP26 being hosted in the UK and what this looks like, linked to the UK tech piece and also access to finance and the great relationship between Singapore and the UK. So with that, happy to hand that back to Jessie. I hope that was of interest. Very happy to share anything that we sort of whizzed over sort of quite quickly. I'm very happy for anybody to ask any sort of further questions on whether we can support you.
Thank you so much, David. I would like to just further commend you on your event that highlighted the importance of avoiding greenwashing, as that is an issue that I feel like, especially in the United States, we've run into a lot, where businesses will claim sustainability initiatives to improve their CSR image when in reality they haven't changed much. So that's an issue that, as global business shifts greener, needs to be addressed. So thank you so much for doing that. And with that, I will transition to our special guest speaker, Glenn Hallam. A quick intro on Glenn Hallam. He is a world-renowned international business. He's world-renowned on working with international business leaders. He's attended Stanford and the University of Minnesota. He's got a PhD in psychology and quantitative methods. Glenn co-founded Green Dock Ventures, which works with sustainability leaders and builds collaborations to accelerate change for the planet. With that being said, Glenn's mission is very much in line with ours, and he's got a lot to say today about leadership and how it plays into the sustainability realm. Glenn?
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. You might want to let me share my screen here real briefly, if you can.
Yeah, one moment.
I got it. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, very good. Okay, so I've had an opportunity to get to know the U.S. Green Chamber of Commerce, Michelle, and the other people that are running this, and I'm really impressed with what you're doing. I run a conference called Green Wave, which is we bring together leaders from around the world, really, who have a passion for sustainability, who are trying to make a difference in sustainability. And we're working together with the U.S. Green Chamber to organize an event in July 21 to 23, which I'd like to invite all of you to. And I just want to briefly just say hello to you in the few minutes I have here. and talk a little bit about some of the ideas that we present at our conference around leadership and how leaders can make a difference in the future. We think of our conference as an unconference. It's really about meeting people and creating collaboration among folks. And the common commitment, I think, is among the people at the conference is, how do we go about really saving the planet? I mean, not to over dramatize it, but we have an epic challenge as a civilization in terms of trying to prevent us from destroying what we have as a beautiful planet. And thinking backwards, we're all, I think, trying to make meaningful change. And I think that we're trying to do it by helping businesses move faster in various areas. And I would emphasize that we're trying to drive true change. I think all of us are at scale and urgently. And if we're not doing it in a way that's true, at scale and urgently, I don't think that we're actually doing what we need to do to try to meet this challenge. And thinking backwards again, I would like to learn more, as I am today, about what chambers are doing to try to drive that change. What are the various ways that they go about doing that? And in fact, I'll be reaching out to some of the people here, to try to get some time with you to talk more about how you think chambers can make a real difference in terms of driving change in business and helping the planet. But I wanted to end with some ideas about this notion of leadership. I believe that our civilization does have the will to make a change, but that we as leaders have the responsibility of tapping into that well, of reaching hearts and minds around us to drive true change at scale urgently. And I want to just feature a few principles of leadership that I think are really pivotal that we'll be talking about in our conference in July. I define leadership as just mobilizing and aligning resources, making things happen by bringing together people, money, ideas, right, to move change. And I came out of an industry in executive development where we really focus on what leaders can do that has power in mobilizing other people. And one way to really mobilize is to not just be writing reports and managing things, but actually casting a compelling vision, one that's exciting to people and doable. I see a future when I see a place where I think people in this area need to have big goals in mind, moonshots. They need to have an aspirational mindset, a sense of urgency in what we're doing if we're going to meet this challenge. I think we all need to be thinking strategically about how we use our time and cutting out things that don't make a big impact. A lot of work around seeing the world as being filled with potential resources for us, that what we have to work with as leaders is not just what's given to us, but we can find ways to build trust and to an authentic approach, actually reach out and build relationships around us. And I do think that there's a lot of innovation and problem solving that has to happen in order for us to move quickly, to help business move quickly. So those are just some examples of some principles. And if I had more time, I would go in more depth on those. But I want to invite you all to our conference. It's going to be July 21 to 23. We're going to have a special session, 2 of them on the 22nd, one in the morning Pacific time and one in the evening to accommodate Asia. And so my name is Glenn Hallam. If you hear from me, I want you just to know who I am and know that I'm here to learn more about what we can be doing as leaders in sustainability and specifically in running our chambers to have an impact for the environment. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Glenn. And that concludes all of our speakers for today. We would like to take a moment to thank all of the panelists for sharing their wonderful initiatives. We firmly believe that with the implementation of programs like these all around the world, we can achieve a more sustainable environment and get one step closer to a greener future, because as we all know, business is center to the fight for a sustainable climate. We chambers have a very powerful influence over our business members and therefore communities as a whole. With this, we can change the course and mindset of our society. So thank you again so much for coming out and collaborating and speaking with us. It is now time for the Q&A. If anyone would like submit a last minute question for our speakers, please send it to me in the chat box. I will go ahead and ask our first question, which is for Lisa from SwedeCham Singapore. And Lisa, the question is, you talk a lot about how you had these multinational corporations partnering with these mom and pop businesses. And that really blew my mind personally. But I was wondering, what is the value proposition you give to the multinational corporations on why they should partner with these smaller businesses? How do you make it seem worthwhile to them?
Okay, so you might be surprised there, and it surprised all of us, I think, how much actually, when we started to talk about Singaporean, like with our multinationals, that they felt, you know, that, okay, we are big employers here in Singapore, we have been here a long time, but we don't really have a really good connection to the local society maybe. And that's where their value proposition was, that they felt that in order for them to connect better here in Singapore, this was a value proposition to really connect with small business players. And I think as well that when we talk to, when a lot of collaboration, I didn't have time to go through all this now, but out of this grew a lot of collaborations. Like we had Ericsson, which is obviously a big networking company, a telecom company. They were paired together with a small chicken rice stall, which is a very iconic type of business here in Singapore, very small. And together they actually help that food center where they are visible to have an online platform, which I didn't have before, for instance. So there were all kinds of little projects that came in. And you know, when a company building up an ESG strategy, the S in the ESG is usually what is the hardest for them to do, the social. And this ticked a lot of boxes, and they learned a lot from these small players as well, what to do in pandemics, how to be agile, how to be nimble, how to respond quickly to something that is happening in the marketplace. So this kind of connection, it created a lot of friendship and a lot of actually goodwill on both sides. But it was interesting because they had nothing to do with them, each other, those connections that we created here from the beginning.
No, it's very interesting. It's very inspiring to me as well to see the large corporations helping out the smaller players. Our next question is for Anna from the Swedish Chamber of Hong Kong. And the question is, what advice do you have to get the attention of local governments to focus on green recovery or development?
Right. So we've had the fortune here in Hong Kong that all chambers of commerce do have a direct dialogue and platform with government officials. They do highly value the international business communities and their feedback and comments on how business can be done here. Now, it is a very free market with easy to do business overall in Hong Kong. So we do already have a very good dialogue among business community and the government officials. But what we've also done, as you can see up here on the logo, is that we've been teaming up, working very closely with the Consulate General of Sweden in promoting their green recovery agenda, as it is also part of the Swedish national agenda and strategy and how we want to drive this agenda abroad, very much in line with what David mentioned with the British Chamber, of course. So through that channel, our Consular General has also been a great supporter of the green recovery agenda in Hong Kong and been continue to highlight this topic in almost all the important forums and high-level dialogues that he is part of. So that's also another channel we're using, basically, our whole network here, and continue to talk about this. And I do think our strength is that we're not giving up. We're just gotten started. And the more important it becomes, the more initiatives that the government announces, the more relevant will we be. So we hope that they will come to us and seek for advice or recommendations of what can be done. And we have a lot to share from like our home country in Sweden, how the government is driving the agenda there, businesses and leaderships, how that's done, how to collaborate between the private, the public sector, academia, and community. So we hope to stay relevant.
Thank you. And lastly, I know we're running very short on time, but this is a question for all of our Singapore speakers. And perhaps if you could just say the first thing that comes to your mind, more or less. But I'm curious. So obviously Singapore has a very ambitious green plan, and all of your chambers are very involved in making this happen. What was it like before? I know all of you have been in business in Singapore for a while. What was the first step you took maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, before this green plan was a reality? What was the first step your chamber took in that direction before it was such a national focus?
Plastic pledge. We did a big campaign at IKEA for plastic pledge.
I'll jump in before Nilay. It was around green bonds, actually. It was around finance, which was really the thing that sort of kick-started a lot of the conversation around funding future projects and growth here in Singapore and looking at different access to funding. So we were trying to conceptualize what the green bond, the green finance piece really looked like. And then as the COP26 agenda was getting closer to the UK hosting that, that naturally all fell into place in terms of the wider ecosystem. So yeah, it was the green bond piece that was the thing that really sort of put it high on our agenda.
Thank you.
Yeah, for EuroCham, as you've seen, we covered a lot of topics under the umbrella of sustainability. But what's important for us is when we stepped into reaching out to a young generation. We were collaborating with all our sharing sessions with universities. And that is also an eye-opener for the senior leaders and the C-levels in the companies. And they do understand that the young generation very much is involved and engaged in these initiatives. They're willing to collaborate and to invest in the climate change. So I think that were eye-openers in a way for Singapore. And I think that definitely contributed a lot to push Singapore in the right direction for the dialogue. Thank you.
Jesse, if I may as well, sorry to just jump in, but I really want to support Nilay on that because that's a really important point. We've got an international school who have got a board in their main atrium, which monitors all of the energy usage across all of their different school departments. And I said to the school, that's brilliant. You know, who came up with that idea? And they said it was the kids. The kids are the ones that are starting to monitor whether the music department's using more energy than last week, and they start asking why. And I think Nilay's point is really, really important because if that's generating much more influence through business and the way that the consumer piece is playing through, we act as amplifiers to really support that agenda. I think that's really important.
I agree. I think that a lot of it will lie with the younger generations to carry on this torch and continue the fight. Thank you so much for answering those questions. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I would now like to hand it over to the CEO of the U.S. Green Chamber, Michelle, for closing remarks.
Thank you, Jesse. And I really want to say thank you all so much. I think this for me was a huge eye-opener in this chamber movement that we've been working on for about 8 to 9 months of bringing different chambers from all over the world together. We've been trying to get and engage chambers in Asia to come, but of course we've always had the time differences. And I feel like there's such an elevated conversation that we had today where we've been talking in the United States and in South America and Central America and even parts of Europe. We've had very, very basic conversations as far as what has been taking place with chambers. You guys are on another level. And you guys are leading this as far as we can see. And we've been doing research and trying to find chambers that have sustainability initiatives all over the world. And Jesse, Amanda, Haley, we now have Thomas and others on our team. I mean, we've been on the hunt. Glenn has also been out there on LinkedIn looking for chamber leaders. So I just want to commend you. I cannot tell you how inspired I am by what you've been doing. And I think every single one of you should have a full hour. And I know that it's probably just as hard or harder to give that 7 minutes. But sometimes we just want a sampling of what is out there. And this was just a rock star sample. So thank you so much. We would love for each of you to be a part of this coalition. We need to have leaders like you to be part of this, to inspire others, to educate. I definitely encourage all of you to connect with Glenn because that particular Green Wave conference, we've made some of the most incredible connections. We now have a partnership with Amazon and their Green Mile. We work with Harvard because of them. We are working with some of the top industries in the world because of Glenn and Greenwave. And so I highly, highly recommend attending that session and connecting with him as well. So thank you. I'm so sorry that we are 3 minutes over. We tried to be very timely. So have a fabulous rest of your day. And thank you again.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
For this opportunity. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. Have a good weekend when you get there.